Here we go. Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Brendan Blakeley, athletic director at Head Royce. We've been trying to get this one pinned down since the inception of the podcast, but Coach is very busy, so I appreciate you jumping on today.
Great to be here, Justin.
All right, well, let's dive in. Take us through the journey, Coach. How did you end up as an athletic director? What were the steps along the way that led to that part from when you finished your own career to ending up where you are now, running the whole department?
Yeah, I think I'm very aware that I've been very fortunate in my professional career. I haven't had a ton of ups and downs. It's just been a lot of ups. I in college thought that I was on a path that was going to lead me to be a high school teacher and a coach. It was either going to be that or go to law school, and I didn't know what law school was going to get me. I spent a couple years at UC Davis, go Ags. Spent a couple years there as the women's lacrosse coach at the club level. And then while I was there, the campus went through a phase where they elevated three women's sports to intercollegiate status. And our sport got picked as one of those. And so I was able to just jumpstart a collegiate coaching career, just kind of being in the right place at the right time. And that was a phenomenal experience. I ended up coaching there for 9 years. The school was a Division II school at the time, and just learned so much at a really young age, early to mid 20s, about coaching, about athletics, about sports psych stuff. I mean, you name it. The coaching staff there was pretty phenomenal and very welcoming to me. And at the time, just a lot of experienced coaches, and I was able just to absorb a ton. And that was, I was very clear while that was all happening that that was not necessarily standard for folks who are getting into athletics, their first steps. And so I'm always looking back at that time very fondly. As my time there was winding down, I started, looking at some other opportunities. I had always been in touch with my high school baseball coach. I also attended Head Royce. And so he and I were having lunch one day and said that they might have an opening here in the PE department. And as things turned out, I came in to Head Royce. I was the assistant athletic director, running middle school programs and teaching some PE. Did that for a couple of years, and I became the AD at the Urban School in San Francisco, another independent school in the city. Phenomenal institution. And I was there for 5 years, and then the job at Head Royce opened up as the long-term AD who was retiring. That was in 2009. So I've been here in this position since 2009, and have been around our campus when we've had some changes, and a lot of improvements. And so it's been a nice landing spot for me, not only because it's my alma mater, and it's a place that means a lot to me, but, kind of situation where my kids go here, and that helps motivate a little bit. Right. And then I just always feel like I want to give to the kids who we have here now the positive experience that I had when I was a student athlete here in high school. And I will say that is something that I fall back on, every couple of weeks when I need a little pick me up in the morning, or I try to dial back in onto a project, that sort of thing.
No, I appreciate that. And we're going to be all over the map here because of my inability to maintain focus and attention. So I'm going to come back to the UC Davis years because I think those are important for both of us. We kind of cross paths a little bit there. But if we look at the thing you just said, I'm an alum. My kids go to school here. It gives you a little bit more of, what did you say? Motivation to make sure you're constantly trying to improve on the margins. Can you talk a little bit about specifics from your experience as a student to your first time back to when you took over as the athletic director, and how you navigated that change management, but also when you're looking through it from a parent lens and thinking, how do I make this the best experience for our students and our student athletes? But also, my kids are coming through, and I have a little different perspective than at the beginning of my career when I was kind of looking at it through one lens. Talk just a little bit about how all of that collides.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I, growing up when I was in high school here, had a lot of school pride, three-sport athlete, got a lot of recognition, got my name in the paper, that sort of thing. And it definitely, my identity was wrapped up in my athletic career, right? And the I'm aware that not everybody has that experience, but let's turn this phone down. I'm aware that not everybody has that experience, but I think it's important. I think about that a lot when I think about what our kids are going through throughout the course of a season. The I had always stayed in contact with my school, alumni basketball games every year. My high school baseball coach retired from Head Royce 3 years ago. So he had been here, throughout the 80s, 90s, aughts, 10s, into the 20s. And so he was a constant, right? And so there's a through line there where he was a very well-liked, well-respected coach here, well-loved. And people would come back to see him, and our institution and our athletic program at Head Royce has benefited by his presence because he's a magnet and people will come back to see him. And then you've got alums at baseball games and people rolling through. And I was one of those people. And then it turned into a job for me because we had a conversation that led him to let me know about an opening here. So caring about the school, right? Even when I didn't work here, before I'd worked here, was a thing. And then when I started working here, then it became an aspect of my professional self as well. And I started working here before I was married, before I had kids. I came here in 2001, the fall of 01, as a first-time employee. It's kind of surreal, right? When you walk around your alma mater and see spots on campus. Even today, a person of my advanced age, there's still one teacher here who taught me in high school. And that's interesting, funny, took me a long, he was like the scariest teacher on campus when I was here. So it took me a while. And as soon as I could call him by his first name, then I knew I was in, I knew I belonged. So once I got sort of comfortable in my new role here, it did things just sort of fell into place because I know the school, I know the culture, I know what it's like for what the kids are going through. Ours is a very challenging academic institution. I went through that as a student myself, so I feel like I can relate to that, and I can impart that to our coaches so that they understand. I talk a lot when we interview potential coaches to come here. I ask them what their high school experience was like, because at a school like Head Royce, like, kids have 2 hours of homework every night, right? Might be more on some evenings. And it's really important that if the coaches aren't coming from an independent school background or didn't have that type of academic load when they were a high school student, I feel I need to make sure that they kind of understand it. And, to that extent, I think my background here helps a lot, so that it helps put me in the shoes of the kids who are here right now. And it helps me work with our coaching staff as well.
Yeah, let's pull on that thread a little bit more for two reasons. Number one, while you were talking, I was thinking about the idea that until we see our own children go through it, no matter how attuned we are, how long we've been doing it, right? You got there in 2001, you took over as the AD in 2009. I don't remember how old your children are, but mine are a freshman and junior in college, and I got an 8th grader who's coming through. And for all those years, even working here, I'm 14 years in at Stevenson, which is, for the listeners, like Head Royce, it's an independent school. We're a boarding school, they're a day school, but the level of rigor is such that here we limit practices to 90 minutes. Like, that's it. If you can't get it done in that time, look, we need to get better from a coaching standpoint. And that was purposeful upon me assuming leadership as I did exactly what you were just describing, experience what at one point in my career was, hey, figure out a way to get it done. Like, that's not my
Yeah.
problem. To later in the career, it's like, well, hold on. I'm in the dorms with these kids. I'm seeing how late they're up. I'm seeing the course loads they're carrying. Senior year, especially, I'm watching my children go through the college application process that takes 4 months, and they're doing that on top of their homework. And the question I have for you is, how have you shifted your approach over time as a leader? And what advice would you have for the greater athletic community in regards to, hey, look, sports are important, but they're student athletes for a reason. And academics is probably going to open up more doors and more financial money collegiately than sports is for 97% of the world. So how are you teaching that at the same time?
I think that so the world of independent schools has changed since I was a student, and I think that schools these days offer so much more to families. Like, we didn't have a full-time counselor when I was in school here. We had a part-time college counselor, and it was one person. Our school was smaller at that time, but our schools are offering so much more. I will say that, and this is not a knock on any independent institution. And get back to your earlier point, Justin. So I've got a 10th grader and a 7th grader here, both of whom have been at Head Royce since kindergarten. We run K through 12. I think that the concept of parenting has been, and the responsibilities that come with parenting have shifted a little bit from the time that I was in high school to now, where there's a little bit more. The schools are offering more, so I think parents expect more from the schools in terms of what the school is going to sort of teach and help guide these kids, right? So certain things, maybe when I was a kid, you'd expect the parents to handle, right? Now the parents are expecting the school to handle that. That can get a little tricky because that's a gray area. There's no sort of definitive lines there. I am much more sympathetic and empathetic to kids and parents these days than I was, say, 20 years ago. Similar to what you were saying, when I got started, it would be just kind of like, you guys got to go figure it out. And these days, I'm a little bit more likely to give some leeway to a parent or a kid when they need a little help, a little guidance, a little assistance, a little nudge. And I would say a lot of that would pop up like in the idea of like missing a practice. When I was in high school, you did not miss practice. If you miss practice, you didn't play in the game, period. No questions asked. And that's not the case around here these days. Maybe it is at some schools, but we have to sort of acknowledge that sometimes the kids get overloaded. Sometimes they get in over their heads with all the commitments that they are trying to make and trying to keep. And that part gets, sometimes we just have to say, give them a day. And like I said, myself 20 years ago, that would have been unthinkable. And these days it happens.
Yeah, and that's actually what I wanted to get into is clearly there and definitely here, and at a lot of schools similarly, you can still move the needle on the margins and be really good at athletics and have balance and empathy, right? So, like, how would you advise anyone that's listening? Because our situations are definitely different to the point you just made. Like, a kid's going to miss, and they're not trying to miss. They're not trying to let you down. It's the world's not going to end, but you can have both. And that's what I think we learn, as you said at the beginning of this, that we're a little bit further along in our careers. But how would you share that wisdom if you were starting over, be it at Head Royce or be it at El Camino where I started, where it's like, look, you can do both. You can have high standards and you can have empathy and understanding.
I think if I was getting started now, if I was talking to somebody who are just stepping into the role of an athletic director, an athletic administrator, I would try to get really specific about examples, right? And I think that sometimes talking in generalities is certainly easier, but the understanding like the specifics, every kid's situation is totally different. Their home life might look one way, but feels a different way to them. The pressures that they're feeling. It's not really fair for us in our roles to make assumptions based on small pieces of data and information that we have about kids, to assume that we know truly where they're coming from and what they're going through. And I think also, the idea of pressure that the kids feel, and anxiety, it's real. And I think that at our school, we've experienced this a ton, certainly coming out of COVID, but we're also now in this situation where I think a lot of us are starting to see things are starting to, the layers are getting peeled back a little bit about what that experience was like, for kids during a lockdown situation, which we had in the Bay Area. I know not everywhere in the country had that, but we definitely did. And I think also talking to somebody, if they're new to the gig, understanding like, why are you here? And I will say that that's something that I gave a speech once, like 15 years ago, and that was the theme of it. Why am I here? How did I end up here? And I come back to that a lot, particularly talking to coaches. Like, why are you coaching? What do you like about it? What brought you to this point? And I would ask a coach that as they're talking about working with their kids. What's most important here? And being kid centric, right? Student centric is one of the things that I have learned, coming back to it. I think we all get into sports and coaching because we like the sport, right? And we enjoy the competition, the strategy, the planning. That's a big piece of it. But when it comes down to it, right, this is a people business. And we know, those of us who have been coaching a long time, it's the relationships that you build and the ability to pull out the best of athletes, whether it's a 10-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 36-year-old. That's what makes it rewarding emotionally and sort of internally, and that's what you walk away with. Like, we've been at our schools a long time. We see alums come back, and I'm always shocked at the really small detailed stuff that they come back, and the stuff that stuck with them, right? And so, like, coach, remember that one time? I'm like, no, man, like, I literally do not remember that. But this is a guy like 8 to 10 years after he graduated from high school, and he's telling me a story about something I said in practice. I'm like, yeah, sounds like me. Like, it sounds like something I would say. Do not remember that at all, but it cracked the kids up. They talked about it for months after that. And that's one of those things also that just, like, it's nice to be at a school, has some longevity, to have those types of folks sort of roll back through, but then also just, it's like the soft fuzzy kind of thing that you hear and you're like, oh, I guess I did have an impact, on them, in a way that sometimes we don't quite understand. I talk a little bit with our coaches about, like, making memories, right? And so for the kids who are into it and who are giving of themselves, we can create a lot of positive memories for these kids. And we all know that sometimes that's like sitting in the back of the bus and, like, shooting the crap with your teammates, that kind of thing. That's a big part of the high school athletic experience for a lot of kids. It's going through the games and the competition and the highs and the lows, that come with that. But that I need the coaches to sort of focus on that people part of it as well. Nobody remembers how you beat a 3-2 zone in the 7th league game that season, right? Like, that's not what people are going to remember. Parents won't remember that. Kids won't remember that. They will remember, how you handled challenges, how you handled situations, how you worked with kids through moments. That's one of the things I try to focus on with our coaches.
Yeah, so many things there that are gold. If you're listening, go back and re-listen to that. I would grab some of those nuggets. Specifically, I'm going to pull out 2 things that you said. The why are you here is a question I think that you need to ask yourself at the end of every season and every year anyway. Because if that answer ever gets to the point where you don't know, that's when you need to, reflect and reevaluate and figure out if this is still the right place. The other thing I was curious about, that you brought up is this idea of alums returning to campus. And obviously, at an independent school, there are relationships built at a different level that ground you both to the institution, but also to the coaches. But I think it's a great question for us as coaches to ask ourselves as part of our own evaluation system, which is, what is my relationship with alumni? Are they coming back? Do we stay in touch? Because those are the things that you just mentioned that transcend. Did we run the right play in this situation? Did we win X game? And I don't know that that is front of mind for any of us. A lot of us talk about the relationship, how valuable it is to get invited to weddings, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, that's something you could self-assess. Like, what's my relationship with the alumni? And then the other thing that I want to go into is, you made a comment earlier about the pride you feel in the institution when you're an alumni and you're being asked to lead. And you were at Davis, then you were at Urban, which aren't your alma mater, right? I started at El Camino, then I was at Palma, and then I'm here. And, nobody's going to tell you that you don't, or argue, excuse me, no one's going to argue that you don't have a different level of care, concern, and pride when you are working for your alma mater. Period. Hard stop. But how do you have that same energy? How do you have that same commitment when you're not at your alma mater? Like, I definitely felt that way at El Camino. I felt that way at Palma, but it definitely feels different. I'm sure the same for you. But it's like, how do you hack that as a new coach, where maybe you're not probably at your alma mater, but you need to act like you are? Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I think part of that equation is just understanding what the value of alumni are, right? And just understanding how that fits. And if you're a coach, can you put yourself in the shoes of the alum, and then look at things through that lens? So if you have alumni games, alumni want to play and they want to come back and they want to feel special, maybe, for like the hour and a half that they come to campus, whether you're playing basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever it is. Not to be crass, but if you look at coaching and the running of a school as a business, right, they are a resource that you could potentially lean on as well. You can lean on them to certainly donate money. You could lean on them to send their kids to your school, if that's an option. You can lean on them just to spread the good word about your team and your program, right? And even if it's just, they're out in the community, or there's, maybe they don't live near you, but they wear a t-shirt that's got the school name on it, something like that, it sparks a conversation. There might be some benefit to that, even if it's just like good vibes about the program. And so understanding as a coach, understanding what alums, can bring is helpful. Also, just understand that, like, just by like scheduling and showing up and having like an alumni basketball game, you are doing a really solid for the alums who want to come and play. Like, if they come back and play, they want to be there for that hour and a half. And you're just making a nice event for them so that they can do that. That's a good thing. And I think that's sort of, there's some holistic value to that as well. Certainly, if you've got alums who are willing to contribute to your program financially and make a donation and help buy stuff, that's good too. And that helps, and there's value into that. And but it doesn't have to be as sort of transactional as a financial contribution. It can just sort of be, creating a nice memory, for alums for that. And understand, using this example of an alumni game, the kids who are on the team playing against the alumni make a connection, and I will say, I had some really funny conversations when I was in high school playing against the alumni in basketball games. And it helped create a through line for me also, of like those guys who had come through the program before me, and created actually some friendships that then, when I became an adult, sort of, reconnected with some guys in a positive way. And then I got a lot of positives out of that when I actually came back to the school and worked there as well.
Yeah, no, those are all really good insights that I hope people can try to pull a few threads out of.
Yeah, and Justin, let me say also though, so like I've worked at 3 schools, 2 of which I attended, right? And so I don't have a big background with that, but I do think that if you want to do a good job and you want to be professional, like, you don't need to have gone to the school to have it feel like something, right? And I think that The idea of being able to hone in on what's important for your program to succeed, whether you went there or not. Any successful AD will have sort of gone through that and been able to focus on what's needed to succeed. I will say that I am not the kind of person who I've never really shopped around for many other jobs. Like, I like it here. I grew up in Oakland. I work in Oakland. It's great for me. It fits me. And other people are different, and life circumstances, happen such that, people do have to get look for other jobs, other lines of work, that kind of thing. And again, like I sort of started at the beginning, I feel very fortunate at the opportunities that have been presented to me. The timing has all worked out really well. I joke around a lot that I do feel like I'm going to get fired here sometime soon, just so that I have to go through some adversity there. But I'm very aware that that I've been very lucky. All that to say, also, right place, right time, take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to you. And I do feel like I've also been able to do that as well, and put myself out there when I needed to.
Yeah, and I think your point there, like, you don't have to be an alum to enjoy a place. I think what I would suggest and what I take away from it that I've never really thought about until we're having this conversation is, if you treat the place you're at like you're that grounded there, like you have roots that existed before you got there, you are going to be that much more motivated to develop those through line connections that are going to serve the institution and the kids you're serving, which is really what it's all about. Versus, well, I didn't really go here, so this is more of a transactional piece. I'm going to be here for 3 years and then I'm out. Like, even if that's the case, like, act as if, right? Act as if it means that same thing to you.
Yeah, totally. And I think in any aspect, and certainly like in any job, you would hope that that's the sort of level of professionalism that people would take to it. In athletics, there is a sort of an undercurrent of emotion, right? Because we give so much. Either as an athlete, you're giving of your physical self. As a coach, we're giving of our time and our emotions, because we get invested in how the team's doing, how the kids are doing, that sort of thing. So it should end up meaning more. I can't, I'll misquote this a little bit, but those who don't give a lot can handle losing because they didn't invest as much emotionally, right? So when you go all in, you're gonna feel it more at the end. I butchered that quote, I apologize. But and you don't have to have gone to the school for that. I know any number of people, friends of mine, who have had 10 different employers, over a couple decades, worth of careers. Obviously, I live in the Bay Area, tech jobs. No knock on tech jobs, but they feel like a dime a dozen. People are, moving around a little bit. That is some people are great at that, and they're just trying to further their careers. I'm the type of person where I dug in, and I'm trying to make the best out of where I currently have found myself. And I've been very fortunate that the institution where I work is quite supportive of athletics. And I feel like it's a healthy environment for what we're trying to do, not only athletically, but then also academically, and working with kids and families to try to make this like a really good experience. My school is really old. It was founded in 1887. And as a girls' school in Berkeley. And like when we have alumni weekend, like we get a lot of gray-haired folks who show up, from the class of, back to the 40s and the 50s, graduating classes, that sort of thing. So one of the things that we actually do here is we bring seniors out to sort of see that they are a piece of this history, and that they can sort of be a part of that. And our alumni director has also done a great job bringing young alums back and talking to our kids and using them as a resource, for and not just for athletics. We have a couple sort of prominent folks who are working in athletics these days, but for our students to kind of understand that there's life past their high school years, I think is a cool thing.
100%. I'm going to pivot here. I'm going to go back to UC Davis for a second. We can keep this
Yeah,
short. We can keep this one short, even though people that are listening should understand that UC Davis, regardless of what the U.S. News and World Report thinks, is the #1 school in the country.
agreed.
But that said, I would love for you to talk a little bit about starting a program at the university level, transitioning from club to varsity sport, and the leadership that was shared with you that you still lean on to this day, from, the Biggses of the world, the Warzekas, the Williams, Fogel, Simpsons, the people that were in that department, that you're still leaning on advice they gave you, and how you can kind of pay some of that forward.
Yeah. So again, I kind of fell into this coaching gig, and again, just timing my 5th year in college, because I love college so much that I decided to stay a 5th year.
Many of us do in the public schools, Coach. They don't make it easy to get out and forth.
So I started coaching the club team, women's lacrosse. I had some friends who were on the team, and that was furthering my goal of looking into being a high school teacher and a high school coach. I actually looked at it as an internship. My plans fell through for moving to Europe after that year, and so I just sort of stuck around Davis. And that year, then all these wheels started turning to have the team transition to being intercollegiate. To the eternal credit and my eternal gratitude to the coaches on staff there, they did not look at me or my program as a burden or something that was pulling resources, away from their teams and pulling space away. They really embraced me and our program in a way that made us feel part of the overall athletic program from day one. And that was phenomenal. And that was a true testament to the actual individuals, some of the names who you just spelled out. And those folks were phenomenal, down to like the coaches that I would play noontime basketball with, and just sort of hang out and talk to those guys. But Coach Biggs in the football program, Coach Morosky, like these are people who played professionally and had a ton of wisdom. And the fact that they just sort of let me be part of that group was really helpful. We had a couple of track coaches at Davis who were phenomenal and very giving of their time, and would come out and like work with my team on sprinting form, things that I had zero background in. That was great. We had and so it's all those nuggets, right? Our women's soccer coach, Mary Claire Robinson, was joked with me that she had always been the youngest coach on staff there, and then I got hired and I was a little bit younger than her, so she loved that, and would needle me about it all the time. But she was really helpful, helping me as a young coach, and she gave me guidance about how to navigate a little bit, with some of the old timers there. All of that was just super helpful. And then one of the biggest areas of growth and learning for me, we had a sports psych person named Paul Solitsky who was on staff there, and Paul worked with our team, and I had zero background in sports psych and the mental side of athletics, and to have somebody come in and work really in depthly with our team, I learned a lot. I can pull out my files in my file cabinet from all of our meetings because I kept them, that was really helpful for me professionally, and super beneficial, to our program. I think that I had a hard time, when you go from a club level of commitments, it's not what it is for intercollegiate sports. When we made that jump, that was a little bit of a transition for the athletes who stayed through there. I had to change my mindset a little bit, asking more and more, from the student athletes. By the time I left there, when I came back to the high school level, that was a little bit of a transition also, because we don't have as much time with the student athletes as you do in college, right? And so I have had to, over the years, try to navigate a little bit of like how much time is too much time, that we can expect from these kids. I'd never heard you say that you guys only have 90 minutes, for your varsity practices, which I think is great, if that works for you. But when you said that, I'm like super curious. Like, what if I told my coaches that? Because we go 2 hours for varsity level teams, we go 90 for JVs. But I wonder if I told them that they had to figure that out, what the response would be.
Let's talk about that for a second, because
yeah,
it is, oh boy, coach. When I first got back to Stevenson in 2010, I'm going to use the word amazed that our athletes were being told at the time that practices during final exams week were optional.
mm-hmm.
And I struggle with that. I'm like, we're not doing anything optionally. If you want to shorten the time, you want to put some caps on things, they are student athletes. One does not trump the other. And Germano actually said to me way back then that, and this is going to expose us a little bit, but you know what? We'll just talk it out. It was a quote that was something along the lines at Stevenson, we expect our kids to be great at everything they do except for sports. And
right.
it wasn't that we didn't have that expectation. It was that athletics always seemed to get the short end of the stick when kids were forced to make choices. So my approach was, we are asking our kids to make choices in what they choose to be committed to. And the life lesson is, whatever you choose to be committed to for that season of your life, you finish the commitment and you juggle that commitment. And that doesn't mean that one is privileged over the other. You have equally committed to being a student and an athlete, or a wilderness person, whatever it happens to be. And so with that, one of the other things we struggled with, and I'm curious, we'll talk through this and people can listen to this conversation as we problem solve and share ideas, was that the worst thing that in hindsight I feel you can do now is put a kid in a position where they have to disappoint an adult. And when we didn't make those choices for them, now they have to make them, and the stress and anxiety and worry that comes with, well, I don't want to disappoint Coach Blakeley, and I definitely don't want to disappoint Mr. Denise, but I got to make a choice. One of them is going to get let down. And so it's like, well, how do we help take some of that away when we're imposing it? So for me, it was like, all right, let's think this one through. Do you really need 2 hours? Hey, at the beginning of the year, sure, whatever, you're trying to put some stuff in. But if you're still practicing for 2 hours as a basketball coach in February, either you're crazy like I was when I was younger, or you don't understand rest and recovery, okay? Or you struggled early on implementing the things that need to be there so that you can reduce the time. I mean, just look at load management in the professional sports. So it's like, how do we help figure out? And for the most part, it's not a mandate, but it's something I definitely talk with my coaches. It's like, look, if you're going more than 90 minutes, we need to be better. And obviously there's some different times when you would do that, but for all intents and purposes, that's your target.
Yeah, agreed. I think so. I'm going to hit on that part that you said, don't make kids have to disappoint an adult. And so for me, there are a lot of systems that schools should make sure that they have in place so that the kids aren't put in that situation, right? So I think, a lot of times when we go to conferences and we hear ADs talk, there's a lot of talk about where do you fit and how does your program fit on your campus. My school is small enough that I can walk out of my office and go talk to the theater director and have a face-to-face conversation about the timing of their musicals and how it impacts athletics. But you don't want to have situations where you allow a kid to sign up for 2 conflicting programs, right? So that is one thing that's been on my mind this year, as we did have some kids who just finished, being in the ensemble in the school musical, which ended last week, and they were trying to play, a sport as well. When you're a small school, you only have so many bodies, and if you need 16 kids on the lacrosse team, then you're going to have to say to 3 of them, you can be in the play because we actually need to make sure that you can show out on game days, like that kind of thing. But I fully agree with your statement, Justin, in and around the commitment and the life lessons, and trying to impart that. My school is not there 100% yet. The concept is there. It's what we're trying to drive, but we don't. Not every one of our families, even though, like, when I have them sign up for sports and they check boxes saying they understand the time commitment, that doesn't seep in all the time. And I've had to write emails, 2 emails this spring to families of 2 of our teams to say, hey, and I did it for one team. And I said, today, like, we need to have better communication from the kids or the parents if Johnny's not going to make practice. And I listed 5 kids from a team who the coaches didn't know where they were that day. Like, that's not okay, right? So I truly did that in an effort to kind of call out the fact that those kids weren't there, and not so much why they weren't there. That wasn't. It was the fact that they didn't tell the coaches. So, and I needed to make sure that our parents understood that, understood that piece as well. They all, emailed back frantically within the next hour saying, "Oh, he was here, he was here, he was here." Like, that's fine. Like, I get it, but like, nobody told the coach. So let's have a little bit more respect for the fact that the coach is planning, for these kids to be here. And it's not really fair that they're not. All of which has nothing to do with winning, right? It's just about the idea of, if you're going to show, then we need you to show, and learn how to communicate. And I will say, your point about not disappointing adults, that's a great lesson for kids to learn. And it's something that has popped up on my radar screen this year, in and around that idea of kids being able to communicate with adults, which then also sort of gets into this concept of, like, literally, what's the mode of communication, right? Can a kid go have a face-to-face with an adult and say something that's disappointing, even if it's just like, "Coach, I can't make it today. I got a huge, chem lab I got to do"? Is it an email? I don't know about at your school, but our kids ignore emails. It's not even they don't even recognize that email exists. Is it a text? Is it a group text? That kind of thing. Then that's like that's what makes me feel old when we start talking about how are kids communicating these days, and specifically, how are they communicating with adults?
No doubt. And I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour now, just backgrounding and grounding and doing some things that kind of spell out the experience that we both have. But I would love to give some takeaways to the audience, people that are like, what wisdom can you share? And I'm gonna start with what you just said, which is, they do need to learn how to disappoint people. That is a life skill. But what you also acknowledged is, we should not programmatically be putting them in situations where we've created the conflict, not their choices, right? And so that's what we've been working around, and that's what you agree on. I will say this: we are different, probably like you, where students have to participate in the co-curricular program, be it sports, be it outdoor education, be it theater, whatever it happens to be. They have to do that in every season of enrollment. And as such, we treat it like college registration. So there's a drop deadline, there's an add deadline. Once you're in, you're getting a grade. If you choose not to show up, it is going to affect graduation. But what you just said that I want to highlight is, how do you communicate with the coaches, with the adults, with the team? So we make you break up in person. Like, you're not texting, you're not emailing. Like, you want to move from the lacrosse team to the track team because it's too overwhelming with your time. Then you need to go talk to your lacrosse coach, make sure they're supportive. You need to go talk to the track coach in person, make sure that they're supportive. And then you're going to circle back to me, and we're going to close the loop on this. But you have to break up in person. That is a life skill. You are not going to have email courage and try to do this stuff without having to face down the demons. Give me a few things that you guys do that you feel are instrumental, or foundational is probably the better word, and how you operate at Head Royce as a Jayhawk, and what you expect out of these kids that you think have been transformational in building the culture that you have.
So I'm going to write down, can't break up in person, or can't break up on text, because I'm gonna walk away from our discussion with that one. I love that.
Coach, Justin, I actually tell them that when they come into office. I said, hey, you need to go break up in person, and then circle back to me, and we'll have a conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that that's great. The and that resonates, I'm sure, with the kids. They can hopefully understand that piece. Um, I, throughout my entire career, have suffered a little bit from imposter syndrome, right? Like, I think sometimes I feel like I snuck my way in to some things in and around my career, and that truly just sort of started when I got a head coaching job. I was a NCAA level coach when I was like 26 years old, head coach, and even though everybody was super welcoming, as I mentioned earlier, I kind of felt like, what, how did literally, how am I here? I kind of feel like I'm pulling one over on everybody, that sort of thing. So I've always suffered from that a little bit. I have suffered as well from having great ideas of things to do and then having too many of them and not being able to follow through on them. Over the years, whether it's like trying to talk about like student leadership on campus and training captains. That's just like, I'm very clear with everybody. I really want it to happen. I have not been able to make it happen. Right. And I think that it's, we were talking about the state athletic directors conference, which is coming up here in a couple weeks. And I walk away from some of those talks and I'm like, that's it. Like, I'm going to, follow up on how great I feel about this program that AD just presented on. And then when you get back to the office the next week, like reality sets in, you're like, I don't really have the bandwidth for that, or I don't have the support, or it's seventh in the list of priorities of things that we actually have to have happen. So that being said, when you ask about like what's a foundation of our program here,
or even coach, just one or two things that you can give. Like I just said, we break up in person here. What are things that
yeah, yeah, I love that. So part of it is like, I don't say this to kids, but I would say it in different words to adults, but like sort of like life philosophy, like don't be an asshole, right? Like just don't be an asshole. You do not have to be mean to people. And they might have done something that was pretty egregious, but I don't have to necessarily get mad about that. That feeling and concept, I think, can relate to every single relationship, that we have within an athletics program. I don't want to be an asshole to our coaches. I don't want to be an asshole to our kids. I don't want to be an asshole to parents, to officials. I don't want our parents to treat officials, that way. I don't want our kids to treat their opponents that way. Try to have some of that respect, for what everybody is trying to accomplish. And I will say, as sort of like, if there's an overarching theme to my approach to like working with people, I would like to think that is a big part of it. I hit on that 9 times out of 10. And sometimes my emotions get the better of me, and then I dial it back a little bit. But I think that that's a big part of it. I think that the other thing that I've been fortunate with our building our program here is there's a couple of things. Somebody told me once when I first started as an AD, try to run the program at the high school level as if it was a division, and these were small schools, but like it was a Division III college program. So try to take care of as many things as you can as an AD in a department so that the coaches can focus on the kids. So I've been fortunate in my at the institutions where I've worked, where we've truly tried to do that. So our coaches don't have to do that much at all. They don't do transportation, they don't do uniforms, they don't do team gear, unless they want to get involved. But I really have tried to make that a piece of what we offer as the coaching job at our schools. That's been a big part of it. And I've also tried, and along with that, I've tried to make my time here at Head Royce. I want Head Royce to be a landing spot for coaches. I don't want it to be a stepping stone, right? And so we have really good kids here. We have a very supportive group of parents. The school supports athletics. And so I want coaches, when they get here, maybe they've been at other schools, maybe they're just getting started, but I want them to understand that if they're here and they're treating people well and they're working hard, like this can be a great spot for them. we have 19 varsity level teams here, and 14 of our head coaches for those, 14 of the 19 head coaches for those teams have been at Head Royce for over 5 years, right? And so that's, I'm very aware that in my mind, the single biggest key to success, and success being like a positive program doesn't mean winning, but it gets at the experience for everyone involved. That coaching consistency is probably the biggest single factor for that. And that's why I want to work hard to make this a great place for great coaches, so that they want to stay and they want to be part of our program. And I feel like we actually have been able to hit on that in a nice way. And that, like, compensation is a piece of that. You want to make sure people feel like they're being compensated for their time, but it's a lot of other things that go into that as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great piece at the end that I'm going to piggyback on very quickly. That you said, be a landing spot for coaches, right?
Yeah.
Rather than a stepping stone. And I think the more that you can hire from that lens to start, helps make that possible. And the other thing you said is, I try to do as much as possible. And that is an area where I would say I've grown in regards to going from head coach to administrator, where I wanted ownership of my team. I'm trying to help my coaches understand how to take ownership of their team.
Yeah.
There's a balance, right? Like, some of them are off campus. One of my coaches is the dean of students. So it's like, at the end of the day, where can I meet them where they are and empower those that want to take ownership, and not punish those that don't, by stepping in and filling those gaps? And I think it's not a one size fits all, just like it's not for the kids, just like it's not for the adults. Here are the guidelines that we are going to operate under. But the answer, as you mentioned earlier, is always, it depends. What's the answer? It depends. I need more information. That's why when, I don't know how you are, but my text response or email response to a question is call. It's like, what? Yeah, I need more context. I can't answer this. But I love that. So thanks for sharing that. I'm gonna give you one more thing here, and then I'll let you get back to life. And what I really am after here is an example of growth mindset. So the question I usually ask is, what is something you have most recently changed your mind on? And the idea is, hey, I used to be pretty dug in about this, and I was over here. And actually, I'm over here now, and here's why. And it can be about sports, it can be about family, it can be about how you navigate the world. I'll give you a quick example, just because it's happened so quickly. I didn't have a passport until right before COVID. Right? I'm a Bay Area guy. I grew up in Oakland and Alameda. I moved to the peninsula. I went to UC Davis. I was in Sacramento. I was coaching. I didn't have time to travel. I wasn't thinking about that. Then we got passports. And I'm sitting here in the last year. I've been to Japan twice and Italy once, and I'm looking to go somewhere else. And the way in which those experiences open up perspective in the world, like, I'm disappointed in myself. For 45 years, I never experienced that because I was too busy coaching and teaching and doing things that were growing me, but I had closed the door on something because I didn't think it was that important.
Yeah. I will support you 100% in your international journeys. I think that I was very fortunate when the first time I traveled internationally. I went and spent a summer, maybe like 4 weeks of a 6-week program with a family in Mexico. And my Spanish teacher encouraged a bunch of us, to do it. So I go down there, live with the family. You get that experience, you get that perspective. And as a 14 or 15-year-old at that point, it opened my eyes to the idea of understanding where people are coming from. Things are different. People bring different experiences to where you're at today. Side note, I played in an adult basketball league during the 4 weeks that I was in this small city there. And athletically, I learned so much from that experience because I was doing well for the team there. All these men who played in the league hated that. And the fact that I had people who were actively rooting against me, I learned a lot from that as well. I hadn't thought about that till you just mentioned that. But yeah, travel is huge. And if anybody's listening, if you fall into Justin's camp, if you haven't got out of the country recently or ever, you got to go. You got to go see the world, see other parts of our big country as well. The One thing that I've changed my mind on, or I have adjusted a little bit, is I'm talking a little bit about like pushing kids and how much can you expect from them. And I went from a college club coach to a college coach to a high school coach. I used to be a little softer on what I expected from kids in the moment, in at the high school level, and I was a I what I have changed on is, look, for those 90 minutes or those 2 hours that you're at practice, you've got to be here completely. You have got to be able to give everything of yourself, both mentally and physically. And if you can't, like, that's okay. You need to give 100% of what you have today. And that 100% is different from Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday. And I used to give a little too much slack. And when I got to the high school level, because I was like, oh, it's not college, but there's no reason not to push everybody really hard during that practice time, because when practice is over, it's over. They're gonna be fine, and they will. That's how they're gonna learn how much they have to give. And I think that is one of the things. As I was alluding to a little bit earlier, I think our schools have been a little, they're shifting to be perhaps a little kinder, in terms of, like, we're offering them all of these, I don't want to say perks, but like things that I didn't have when I was a student in high school, which feel nice. And I have tried to make sure, though, that they are also then getting pushed really hard. I believe in that. I believe in getting pushed academically, and challenged. And you might mean that you get a B where you wanted to get an A, and that's the way that it goes. Likewise, I believe in pushing kids really hard in practice so that they can see what their best is and understand that. And once they do that, that is truly like the benefit and the life lesson that they can take with them outside of the court or the field, and understand truly what it is that they are capable of accomplishing.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up going all the way back to the question I asked earlier, which was, how do you hold high standards and still have empathy? And you can still do that, right? You don't have to be an
Right.
asshole. Like, you don't have to, be over the top, but the standard's the standard. And the kids want to be coached. They want to be taught. They want to be held to standard. It's age appropriate for them. So your point is taken. And it's funny because most of us at our age talk to our former athletes and they come by and they're like, Coach, you're getting soft. But
Right.
you're the opposite, going like, actually, I've gotten a lot harder. It's figuring out the balance and how you hold high standards while maintaining an appropriate level of decorum and leadership. Like, you can do both.
Yeah, and I think it's actually not that hard when you talk about it before the season or at the start of the season. You have a discussion about what the expectations are, and then just always flip it back to the kids. Hey guys, here are the expectations that we laid out. Are we meeting these? And even if it's in the middle of a drill, using basketball as an example, and the team is sucking at it, to say, guys, here's what we said. Are we there? Are we not? Then it's not you telling them something; it's them having to, reflect a little bit, and having to, figure it out on their own, right? And that's like where you teach them how to be, independent thinkers, and not automatons, where we're just sort of like programming a robot and expecting, results. I will say the first year that I was at Head Royce as the assistant AD, I was told that I had to be the girls' varsity tennis coach. I'm like, great, like, I play tennis a little bit, never played competitively, but we're told to do that. And very early on, I realized, like, so I've got nothing to offer during the changeovers in between sets, right? But I would just ask the kids, hey, tell me what's working. Tell me what's not working. Okay, well, how are we going to improve on that, right? So they're coming up with their own ideas. And I'm pretty sure it did not result in us winning or losing any matches, but it gave them some of the agency to actively think on their own and not be told what to do. And I think that sometimes I fall back on that experience a lot when you're talking about high standards. Let's set the standards and let's just talk about, are we getting to them or not? And if we're not, what do we need to do to get there? And then the coach is not the bad guy, as they're working with the kids, or the AD is not the bad guy working with the coach. It's just truly having a conversation about where we're at, and are we giving what we need to give to be able to reach that. level that we want to achieve.
Yes, sir. And I'm going to put a pin in that by adding, when you talk about the standards, you're not talking about outcomes. You're talking about
Correct.
process. You're
Yeah.
talking about behaviors. And I think it's a very fine line as you start structuring your team as to what you put on the wall that you're consistently pointing towards, right? So earlier me is, hey, these are our check marks, right? Did we go through league undefeated? Did we win a section? Did we did X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z? Versus now it's, are we on time? Are we giving 100% of our effort? And I think there's a big difference between engineering to an outcome versus establishing discipline, habit, systems, and process to show up as your best self every day, because that's what's going to carry over into life.
Yeah, for sure. I have a first-year varsity boys basketball coach. We just had a really successful season, won a sectional title, and we just had a meeting this week. And I just said, like, let's focus in on this quote: "The journey is the destination." Right? And I come back to that a lot. If the journey sucks, it doesn't matter where you end up. Like, let's focus on what we're doing, and we're going to end up in a good place. And it might mean winning a sectional title. It might mean just simply having the most successful season that you could have had on all fronts.
No doubt. And I think that's a great place to stop, because I think if people frame their approach from that quote, at the end of the day, there's no reason that every season isn't successful, because ultimately you are the definition of success is always changing based on the horses that are in the room. And at the end of the day, right, how are you navigating that and figuring out, how to best serve and keep the student at the center of the equation? And I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah, I totally agree. And my favorite example is our running coaches and our swimming coaches.
Yeah.
You're either the fastest kid in the pool or you're not, and that's okay. But our coaches always come back, and for track as well, we had 6 kids PR, right? And I'm like, that's great. I don't know where that means they finished in the race, but the fact that they were getting better and were improving is really cool. And those kids feel great about it, because 2 weeks ago they ran at this speed, and now they're running here, and that's the improvement, and that's the growth and the gain that they get out of that. And that to me is one of those things that's not outcome oriented. You may never be fast enough to win the race because you've got somebody else in your league who's just going to be faster, and that's okay.
Well, that last statement is super helpful for me. I took a note: running coaches, swimming coaches, running sports, swimming sports, time-based sports.
Yeah.
I want to have another conversation, maybe with you, maybe with other people, but then, like, how do you take that approach and apply it to a team-based sport, right? Which is neither here nor there, but now I'm going to go find some swim and track coaches and figure out how we're going to apply that thinking, because I think you're right. That's a transformational thought process that can only help grow people. And I think that's what people should be walking away from this episode, who don't coach running and swimming, who coach team-based sports or hell individual sports, where it's like, how do I use that model, right, to help these kids? So thank you for that. Appreciate you jumping on. I'm going to see you next week. In the meantime, have some fun out there.
All right, Justin, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.